I'm the Cyber Intelligence Center Regional Lead for City APAC, and it's a pleasure to be with you today. I'll introduce you our panel. Richard Harrison, CISO Health Alliance, Ashish Khanna, CISO The Oberoi Group, Mohammed Maad, CISO Faisal Bank, Amit Chaubey, Head of Cybersecurity Risk, Governance and Compliance, Osgrid. Welcome to the session. Can you please tell us a little bit more about your background?
Shall I start? So I'm Richard Harrison. For the past 4 years, I've been the CISO at Health Alliance in New Zealand. Health Alliance provides managed IT services to 4 of the largest district health boards in the country, and we're providing secondary, that's hospital services, to about 2/5 of the national population. It's about 2 million people. We've probably got one of the largest and most complex IT environments in the Australia, New Zealand, South Pacific region. Something like 30,000 users, 4,000 servers, tens of thousands of devices, a very highly complex, really integrated environment. So I'm responsible for security there. We're in the first phase of a 10-year plan to transform the health system in our region. And obviously cybersecurity is a key strand and a core capability of that plan.
Hi, my name is Mohammed Maad, and just like Richard, I have been working with Russell Bank for the past 4 years, looking after the information security and cybersecurity responsibilities for the bank. The bank is growing. In Pakistan, we have a very dynamic environment for digital footprint increase. This is pushed by the government as well as the central bank, and all the banks are actually doing that. So that puts a lot of emphasis on making sure that the services and the operations of the bank are covered from an end-to-end perspective for secure delivery of products and services. Prior to that, I was with the firm in the consulting area for pretty long years, and my initial career was all about IT. So I headed IT in 2 major banks in Pakistan, and then moved on to consulting, and now landed myself in the cybersecurity realm of the operations. Thank you.
Well, hi, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone. My name is Ashish Khanna. I'm based in Delhi, India. I work for Oberoi Hotels and Resort. We are an Indian conglomerate having presence in 7 countries. We've got 32 hotels across the globe, and that's one line of business. Apart from that, we have other line of businesses, which is aviation, in-flight catering. So we have got customers across the globe, and happy to be on this panel.
Thanks, Ashish, and thanks everyone. Just a quick introduction. My name is Amit. I'm based out in Sydney right now. I have moved to Sydney 2 years back. Before that, I was in Singapore for almost like 9 years, working with Citibank and JP Morgan Chase. This is my 21 year going as a professional. I had the GRC function for the Osgrid. Osgrid is one of the largest utilities and critical infrastructure company in Australia. 1.7 million customers, providing services to a lot of critical sites and critical infrastructure. My role typically goes from the compliance and governance perspective, and also own some programs, which is penetration testing, security reviews, and that stuff. And I do a lot of these panel discussion or other stuff. I do a lot of volunteer work as well. I'm the very active member in the cybersecurity world in Asia and Australia as well. So I do this in my free time. So very happy to be part of this esteemed panel. So thank you everyone for joining us and joining me in this panel.
Very interesting and diverse backgrounds. Thank you for the introduction. Today we will discuss about cybersecurity versus digitalization. How can we make cybersecurity an integral component of our company trust and value proposition? To discuss more on how we can find the right balance between usability and security, I will start with 2 questions to our panelists. As the questions are related, please feel free to answer both questions together. The first question: How have you overcome the challenge of ensuring that cyber teams are involved early in digital transformation programs? And the second question, what has proven effective for balancing the business push for digitalization with cybersecurity needs? What is left to do? So let's start with Mohammed, please.
Yeah, thank you very much. My personal experience is that when we started the digital agenda in the bank, there was a great push, and the agility was the key for a point of success for us. However, the senior management of the bank was very uptight about it, and they actually put on a governance framework, a very robust governance framework, which included cybersecurity as a mandatory stakeholder. So whenever a particular strategy was being drafted for the digital roadmap and any kind of initiative that was being discussed, we were part of the whole discussion group, and we put an opinion whether or not to proceed with a particular initiative. Now, of course, when a certain initiative is being rolled out or being selected and developed, the nitty-gritties and the technical aspects of this security are also being looked at. So that's how we dealt with the requirement of an early induction into the whole process. Now we don't portray ourselves as the gatekeeper or as the policeman, so to speak. We are actually a value addition party in the whole process. And when we look at the various processes and various controls, we we tend to give advice and guidance to all the digital teams and the IT teams as well, how to make the system more robust and secure from an end-to-end perspective. That was the answer to the first question. I'll chip in again for the second one.
Amit, can you come next, please? You are on mute.
Yep, I was in. I very much agree what Mohammed said. I think so. I think so. The key challenge, we were operating in a lot of old-fashioned way, and suddenly what happened because of the sudden increase in demand from the customers about doing the ease of business, everybody started thinking about moving to the digital world. And when you talk about digital world, you still have a lot of legacy application, the way business is running, their people, process, and technology. All in all, it's a very legacy way. So once you start talking about moving to the digital world, the first thing comes, okay, how to give the seamless customer satisfaction kind of experience. But at the same point in time, you're also increasing the risk. I can give an example. Take a bank. Anybody who trusts the bank, in the past were going to the bank, walking all the way to the bank and doing the transaction on the counter. That's a trust factor because they know from their eyes that it has been done and I'm happy. Now you ask them to do a transaction over the internet, they're not really sure, especially what we are recently seeing that a lot of people who is aged above 55 and 60 who has never been engaged to the digital world, they are very skeptical or scared about doing a transaction over the internet banking. So I think when we start talking about the digital world, I think so the few components which I talk about, of course, you should be the part of the process from the start, as Mohammed said. So you can actually design the right security for the services you're going to move over the digital footprint. At the same point in time, I think so it's important that you can make an conscious effort to educate your customers or educate your partners who is going to support or who's going to use that services to build the trust what they are actually going to get it. It's not that, okay, why I'm getting it and is it secure or not secure? I think so this is the common question goes to the end user mind. Is it really secure? Because one side, the cyber world is talking about a lot of risk and issues, and every day we are seeing the news. So people are not really sure whether it's secure or it's unsecure, and that's where the whole ecosystem should be designed in. While you're building the security inside and you're working with the stakeholder, you're part of the strategy. Somebody is taking care of those things internally. You have the similar line of a stream of work stream who is going out and also educating and trying to give a right perspective to the customer so they can start trusting what you're building. Because if you're not giving that level of thought process, what's going to happen? You eventually realize your digital platform is not used, and then you start questioning about the return of investment and other stuff. So I feel that we have, whoever is going to, from the digital strategy perspective, it should be looked holistically, and cyber should not be considered as a blocker. Cyber should be considered as an enabler, because at the end of the day, when nobody is talking to no one and a transaction is happening, that's where the security is the most important thing. And most of the organizations started taking that as a I would say they have started adopting cyber as one of the business requirement, rather than seeing that, okay, cyber will come and say no, and then we will be stopped. So I think so there's a mindset change is already happening. And because of the COVID, I think so thanks to the COVID, a lot of things has changed. People have started really trusting what we say and how to operate the business. So just my high level perspective on that.
Yeah, good points, Amit. Richard, can you come next, please?
Sure. So we've taken, I guess, quite a strategic approach to it. So one of the first things that I've done 3-4 years ago was to develop a security strategy that's aligned to what the business is trying to achieve across our region. And so the first thing we want to ask is what are your business goals? What are you trying to achieve as a region? What are the risks that are going to prevent you from achieving those goals? And then how do we manage and control those goals? And out of that comes a program of security initiatives that are aligned to a set of security goals that we've identified. And they're broadly based around the NIST cybersecurity framework. So at the high level, we've taken a very risk management driven approach based on what the business is trying to achieve. And we've asked the business, and what's your risk appetite? What are you prepared to accept from a risk management perspective? That then flows through into some work that we've been doing recently around, we have a transformation methodology within our program management office, everything from concept through to going into production. And we've aligned the points at which we want security and risk to be involved in the conversations when the PMO and the architects are developing new solutions coming into our environment. So we want to do an upfront risk assessment. What's the business context of the solution that you're trying to deliver? What are the risks from a business perspective does that present? And then what controls can you put in place to manage those risks, so that at the end of the day, when you go live, your residual risks are within an acceptable range, or at least you know what they are, right? But in health, we've had obviously the pandemic in the last year. That's driven an awful lot of change in health systems globally, particularly from an IT perspective. The threat landscape has ramped up significantly and targeted health quite heavily. So it's vitally important that we actually work very closely with our program management office, the project managers, the program managers who are running the various programs across our environment. Get their buy-in to that process, and what we are doing at the end, I guess, is formally certifying and accrediting those solutions. Right? So I will certify as the CISO. This is the risk level, and then the business owner will accredit and say, yes, I'm prepared to accept any residual risks, and we're going to go into production. So it's a very structured sort of risk management, risk-based approach to doing things, right through from, say, the upfront risk assessment, input to design, and assurance at the end, whether it's pen testing, vulnerability assessments, or configuration checks. And then built around that are ongoing monitoring and alerting and logging and checking of solutions in whatever environment it might be, so that we're being very proactive in our management of vulnerabilities. So again, we take a very threat-driven approach to that, threat intelligence-driven approach. I know I can't fix everything in my environment. I've got lots of legacy, just like everybody else, no doubt. But I need to fix the things that are really, really important, those externally facing, actively exploited vulnerabilities, they're the things that we need to give some priority to. And then that is providing another layer of sort of defense for the business.
Yes, very interesting. Yes, please go ahead, Mohammed.
Good. I think what Richard has just mentioned, I totally agree with that. This is exactly what we try to do. We do the risk analysis or risk assessment at each stage, and of course I agree 100% with you. The decision or any kind of action that is warranted, it depends on primarily on the residual risk of that particular initiative. Holistic risk analysis is also something that we perform, and that provides us with our risk posture over a particular period. And then this risk posture is also analyzed from a residual risk perspective. What can we do? And just like you mentioned about the appetite and the tolerance, both of these factors are there part and parcel. So what is the business's appetite to absorb any kind of risk? Apparently, everything sounds very, very smooth and very secure, so to speak. But we all know that one minor glitch in the entire ecosystem can actually falter the entire fabric of our security cloud. So I 100% agree with what Richard is saying.
Yeah, very interesting. The both approaches you mentioned, right? So I'm as threat intelligence professional, I need to highlight our role in this situation, because when you fully understand your threat model, so who are the threat actors that are targeting your big business, how they are doing, and what are the strengths and the gaps in your control, you can actually have a threat informed risk assessment more realistically, right? So I really agree with what you both said. And I think this is what we need to do as companies, to have security, not only as enable, but a strategy for business digitization and innovation. So my next question is, what have been improved efficient so far, and what do you think could be improved more?
I think I can put a candid remark on that. Uh, we've tried to do a lot of things, but the rapid change in technology and rapid, introduction of various tools and services, I mean, it's hard to keep up. That is one area, in my opinion, which is causing a bit of problem for us, because uh, the fintechs, I mean, they're just pushing out products for all of us to use. There are services there which our business intends to bring it on as quickly as possible, and they're agile. And for them, if they don't market that particular service quickly or be the first in marketing that, the entire business side is going to get lost. So for us as security professionals here, at least in Pakistan, we are having this crunch on the amount of resources, or the number of resources who can understand these technology platforms, these fintech options available to us, so that we can gauge the level of risks, cybersecurity risks that these particular threats poses to us. Yes, we do agree that unless and until our bank or our employer pushes out these products to our customers and these are being sold, we don't get to get our pay out. And if there's no business, of course, there's no need for a security department or function there. Uh, but making sure that this assessment, these reviews, and the value addition that we intend to perform or do for these services, I am having a crunch of resources. So that's the challenge that we're going to face in the near future as well, especially with all these new fintechs coming in.
Yeah. I mean, I think from our point of view, there's obviously at the moment a big drive around public trust in health systems because of the pandemic, and obviously as we're ramping up vaccination programs, immunization programs, that they are going to become targets, and patients will be targeted for phishing and criminal purposes. So we're well aware of that. But in terms of the bigger picture, the next phase for me is, to embed that process of what we're calling certification and accreditation. We need to do education of our architects, we need to do education of our developers, education of our senior responsible officers and executives, the sponsors of projects and programs. We need to adopt better development frameworks, secure development frameworks in particular. Teach our developers how to develop securely, because we can't be everywhere. I think to Mohammed's point, we're a small team and we can't be in every single project. So we need to develop the knowledge and the skills and give the tools, particularly in a DevOps environment, create the tool chains that allow automated testing, that allow for the developers themselves to understand when they've got a problem and to fix it. So that all we have to do at the end is for them to show us the tick in the box to say this has passed a test and we're happy. So the more we can build patterns, architectural patterns that we've already approved, and the more that we can build automation into the process, should start to embed those secure by design features into solutions as we roll out.
Ashish, you want to chip in? Or?
I think he may have dropped off actually.
Yeah, I think he's dropped off.
Okay, all right. So I think so. The few questions coming, but let me just quickly answer possibly what has been asked. One of the key things which possibly my view says, if the business is not clearly defined a forecasted strategy, IT strategy and cyber strategy can't fit, because most of the tools and technologies which we are going to implement, we are implementing from a forward-looking approach. But then aligning with the business strategy, if they decided to roll out a application which is going to replace a legacy application, I think so that need to be adjusted when we are driving the IT strategy or cyber strategy with the business strategy. Second, whenever we are defining the cyber strategy or IT strategy, it's always good to engage the stakeholder, especially when we are driving a digital strategy, because sometimes they come back with multiple options, but they eventually go with only one or two options. And what's going to happen that when you have catered the resources, you have catered the expenses around that, and suddenly the things change. So I think so there should be a clear agreement between the business and technology, and because technology drives the cyber controls, right? So what technology you're going to implement, that drives the cyber control. Some of the business just go and pick off the shelf product from the cloud example. They have the credit card, they just click on that, click here and click there, and they just buy something. And later on, they realize that they have leaked the data or they have compromised the data because they were not sure whether we should use it or not. And that's where I agree with Richard yourself on the education piece, because they know it's easy way out. They understand it as an easy way to do the things, but sometimes they really don't understand the consequences and impact that could have, and especially the phishing and ransomware, which you were talking about and you alluded. I think so. End business user who is not a tech savvy or not technology person sometimes really can't make the difference between a genuine email and the phishing email, and sometimes that leads to a problem. So I think so the culture about awareness, bringing that, and I think so the bigger challenge in the digital transformation which anybody would have seen is basically the culture change problem, because most of the people are working in a way they have been working for a long time. Now you suddenly start asking them to go and do the things differently. First, they will also think what's impact on me, right? And sometimes people start thinking impact from the impact to their jobs all the way to the possibly something else, and they are very hesitant to change it. And then you add on top of that, if you add the security layer of that, you're not going to do this, you're not going to do this. And that's create a lot of uneasiness when you drive a culture change. And I think so the culture piece is something which I think is most important to manage, most important to handle, because that's where you have the emotional stuff. That's what you have the sentiment associated with that, and people start thinking why we are doing differently, what's going to happen to me, is it going to impact me? And those things need to be considered as a part of the overall overall transformation program. And when it comes to the digital, of course, you need to consider the business, IT and cyber, because earlier we were thinking everything in IT is cyber, but actually it's not. IT and cyber is possibly now they started complementing more to each other, rather than so everybody saying, oh, IT is cyber is sitting under the IT. It's an IT strategy. Actually, there's a cyber strategy piece and there's IT strategy piece. So that's my view on the changes which I'm seeing right now.
Thanks for answering the question. So we welcome all questions by all our audience. So please feel free to share your questions in the chat. So Richard, what are your thoughts in this cultural change that Amit just mentioned? What do you think should be done to promote this cultural change to put together security and digital transformation?
So I suppose it depends on how you define culture. But to me, culture is the way you do things, right? It's the way you do things around here, yeah. And so fundamentally, if we have a weakness in a process, then so let me start again. So yeah, culture is the way we do things around here. So when we're looking at it from a security point of view, we need to understand what is driving people's behavior. And what drives people's behavior is often poor process, policy, the need to get into production as fast as possible because there's a business requirement to do so. The deadline becomes everything, as opposed to doing it right first time. So if you understand what's driving the behavior, you can then start to look at how do we change the things that are driving the behavior, right? And that is an education piece. It's a process piece. And I think as Amit's point, security is about 80% people and process. The technology piece is actually quite easy, but often when we deploy it, we don't really deploy it thinking about the people process issues that go with it. So for me, look to understand what's driving the behavior and try and get to the root cause of driving those behaviors. And I think to pick up on the question that's there around, primary cause of vulnerabilities being this misalignment between the security and the C-suite, that is actually one of the fundamental drivers. And so I'm the CISO. I work for the board, right? I work for the executive. My job is to speak their language, not expect them to understand my language. So we need to be putting risks in business terms. And so when I look at my cyber strategy, I need to be sort of connecting my tactics for control into things that matter to them. So it's kind of connecting the head to the heart. What do they care about? Well, they care about patient safety. They care about patient outcomes, right? They care about business efficiency. Okay. If I can't put the risk of a vulnerability into those terms, then I'll have no chance or I'll have a more limited chance of getting sort of acceptance that there's a risk that needs to be managed, and perhaps further investment required. Right? So for me, actually the conversation with the board is quite important. If I go and start talking Japanese, but they only speak Italian, then we're going to have a problem, and that's I think fundamentally one of the biggest issues in security risk management right now, is that translation of the technical into business.
And I agree. We also get the similar ask sometime when we write anything from a technical point of view, because it's not translating especially for the senior management, because they are not tech savvy and they're not very cyber, and we explain the problem so big as a cyber, which is, but then they want to understand, okay, so tell me in the layman's language what it means to me if I have to do anything, right? Because they need to understand first before they actually think about it, what they can provide, what they can do to support the problem solving, right? But sometimes they really don't understand. So that's why it end up with like going back and forth a lot of time before you actually reach to a level where somebody who is a person who actually interpret both sides better, get into the picture and try to educate both sides that, okay, this is the way you have to explain, or this is the problem you're talking about. I agree.
I think
Thank you.
you know what Richard just mentioned. What I see is that changing a particular culture or an environment requires executive sponsorship. I mean, it has to be the tone from the top. If that doesn't happen, of course, nothing will do. Uh, you know, when I joined this bank, this organization, there was a particular method through which this entire machinery used to work, and we again, you know, being outsiders or seen as outsiders for the first 1 year, I guess. Uh, you know, whenever we attempt to do or modify any kind of process, you know, there was always reluctance from everyone, be it business, be it technology, be it even the senior management. So it took us a year to, you know, really inculcate this change in the mindset of the people at the top, so that you know, we were able to explain to them what the business is being affected from a cyber risk perspective. Once they understood it, then of course this was drilled down, put it down to all the different functions of the organization, and then we were able to really push the agenda up. Uh, like my esteemed colleagues just mentioned, technology is the easiest piece. Unfortunately, you know, we techies and we security people sometimes get deluded by you know, using a particular technology, and if you think that we can bring it in the organization, this will solve our problems. Technology doesn't solve any kind of problems. They actually bring a lot of vulnerabilities, inherent vulnerabilities into the ecosystem. It's the people and the process that's the most trickiest part. And alhamdulillah, we were able to, you know, move around this issue. And now, after 4 years working in this organization, there's been a change. And you know, get along with a lot of regulators here, people who come and do inspection at our banks. I mean, they tell us that the process that we have inculcated in this organization is somewhat more agile and more robust as compared to other banks, be it larger or mid-sized like us. But you know, this is what we were able to achieve. And if the senior management doesn't agree with whatever we're saying, if you're not able to explain our perspective and our point of view in a business language to them, of course, nothing will work. That's my point.
Amit, are you going to speak?
No, I've already spoken about this. So we can go to the next one if you really want.
Okay, thank you. So very good, interesting points. We talk about the risk approach, cyber risk approach. We talked about threat informed defense, and we talked about the right communication channels between us, the cybersecurity folks, the board, and the operations field. So let's, as we are going to the end, let's start to share the final thoughts, each of you, what advice you have to other companies that are starting or are in the middle of their digital transformation programs and want to have cybersecurity built in. Mohammed, can you start, please?
Yeah, I think we already touched upon this. There has to be a strategic perspective that needs to be brought in to any organization. I mean, whether they're in the infancy of digital push or maybe somewhere in the middle, if the strategic point of view and strategic drive is not there, I don't think, you know, they may be successes at the end of the day, but those were just mere luck. So we need to understand, just like Richard and our esteemed colleagues also mentioned, that what are the business goals, how to achieve them, and what's the best way to achieve them with a robust security. Now, security is not absolute; is always relative. Uh, so that particular strategic move is going to deliver the goals in the best possible manner. Time to market is going to be reduced as well if we bring in a lot of automation in the whole process, because nothing here can be done by hand anymore. So we have to have automation within the footprint of cybersecurity as well. So that's what I can actually advise to any organization here.
I can go next. So one of the few things which I definitely want, if I'm managing a transformation program, or especially when you have a mandate to go and transform really, not just lift and shift. When you're talking about really a transformation, few things, you keep looking for the opportunity to improve in the transformation program. What happens sometimes when we start a transformation program, we define the budget around that, we define the scope around that, and we keep working on and thinking that, okay, this is what, sometimes we, in between of a transformation program, there is a requirement change happen, and you sometime possibly as a technology team don't go back to the business to check that again, rather make the changes at their end because they think that, okay, this technology will be replaced with that technology. That's one thing. The second, I'm a big fan about automation, because why I prefer automation, because in automation it's like either it's a binary, it's a 0 or 1. If you have designed a solution and it's automated, it's going to work as you design, unless somebody go and fiddle around that. So in the transformation piece, I always prefer, and I always talk to my team whenever I get an opportunity, can we automate something here? Can we reduce the manual process? Because the sustainability of the controls, whenever we have a control which is operating in a hybrid environment, either it's a manual and automatic, there's always a chance about you're going to miss something. And if you see, the most of the time, the vulnerability which has been left out is because of human errors, right? Because if you have developed the automated control, either the control will fail and you'll get alert, because most of the time when you're building the automated solution, you have an alerting mechanism in place. But the human error are not going to be picked up unless somebody have a manual maker and checker process, which everybody is constrained with the resources and budget and other thing. So my two views, keep looking your program and ensuring that this program is rightly aligned from the day one till you delivering it. And second, if you can build the automation as much as you can, then that will reduce your risk about errors. That will work, your control will work as you design, and it will give you the desired result and the dashboard for management to review and determine the risk associated with that environment.
We just received a little, sorry to interrupt you, we just received a little, 2 more questions I will read, so we decide which we can respond, as we have only 8 minutes to go. So Richard, what do you think? What one policy really changed and helped 8% of the change to be more proactive in your company?
Oh, thanks for putting me on the spot there.
Because you were in my list to talk, right?
what one policy change really helped? I think in our organization, what really helped us was to define. It was one of the things I was going to actually say in response to the question, was the adoption of standards and patterns, right? Because that makes it so much easier for the project managers, the architects, the developers to embed security into their designs in a more holistic way. So if you can develop secure patterns, have clear standards for people to follow, have processes for stepping outside of those things, because sometimes you will have to for business reasons, but understand why you're stepping outside and make a conscious decision. So I'd say that was probably one of the biggest things that we did to help drive that change through.
If I have to, sorry,
go ahead, Amit. Go ahead.
So if I have to put one item in for this particular topic, I would say any changes in the environment must follow a robust process, because most of the time the change management process is sometimes bypassed and you really don't know what has changed. One of the key things, that's why I think so when we talk about ITSM process, everybody know the ITSM process, but one thing is somebody has made additional changes as a part of the change, and the change reconciliation piece and post-implementation piece. So one thing which if I have to, the robust change management process in the organization for anything, right? Even if you're changing a policy, that policy change should go through a proper channel to ensure the policy is rightly being approved at the right level and it enforced. But sometimes people just make the changes or just because they want to bypass something, they make light changes saying, oh, it's not major change, it's just a minor change, but the minor change also can make a major impact on the organization.
I agree, and I think that was my comment as well.
Okay.
Change management is the only thing that actually drives the entire ecosystem. So having agreed to that, we all my personal experience again is that when we implemented a couple of standards within our environment, that helped a lot. And these standards provide a regime to operate, and it's very easy to make sure that changes that are going into the ecosystem don't disrupt or interrupt the normal BAU of the organization. But unfortunately, for a bank, there are many standards. Unlike a healthcare institute where you can always implement HIPAA, and that's about it. We have numerous kind of standards that we need to implement. For example, for payment cards, we have to do the PCI standard. For management, we are doing the ISO 27001-2. And again, for quantification of risk assessments and all, we are either using FAIR or the NIST framework. So that is difficult, but I think this provides a lot of regime and a lot of control in the overall operations of cybersecurity and IT for us.
Thank you very much, Mohammed. So our time is coming to an end. We have one last question. I will answer very fast. So the question is how to create awareness in security, in IT security, starting by yourself. We need to understand the cyber threats that are out there and how they can affect us, and understand that security is a shared responsibility. It's not responsibility for the security folks. It's all of us. We need to have a role in defending our business and also our security, cyber security at home and in everything we do. So thank you very much for sharing this afternoon with me, Richard, Mohammed, Amit, and Ashish. Thank you everybody for joining us. And it was a pleasure.
Pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.